So it's finally gotten to that day that you've been waiting for. You've gotten to your goal of items as a minimalist. Maybe it's 100, maybe it's 150, whatever that number is, you're finally there. So now what do you do? Well, this video is going to cover that. We're going to talk about how do you maintain minimalism. So now that you're a minimalist, I want to clear up one major misconception. It's something that took me a little while to understand. Minimalists still buy things. This is something maybe a little counterintuitive. So what I do is when I go shopping, which is about once a year for clothes, I'll go and actually buy things, of course, this makes sense, but I'll actually go out of my way to pay a little bit more than what I normally would. So it doesn't mean that I'm trying to not get deals, because of course I'm trying to get deals, I'm just like everybody else, but I'll buy the more high quality items that normally, before I became a minimalist, I wouldn't bother with. And there's a reason behind this. I do this because I know I'm going to be using these items a lot. I only own 150 things, so when I buy something like a pair of jeans, I go out of my way to buy some really, really nice pairs. And it's not so I look better or anything like this, it's because I need something that's going to last me for a long time. I need something I can wear like 3 or 4 times a week and it's going to be totally fine. So part of being a minimalist is having very minimal amount of things, right, where the name came from, but it doesn't mean skimping on the quality. You're going to actually want to maximize the quality of the items that you have. The next thing that I learned as being a minimalist was actually didn't make sense at the time. So I got to my goal. For me, it was 100 things at first. I eventually switched that to 150. But when I first got down to 100 things, I was like, I'm done. I can stop being like having to focus on this stuff. And it's not entirely true. It turns out that just on the course of everyday life, you're still going to get new things. People are going to give you stuff. Stuff's going to come out of like nowhere, seemingly. So I continue to do my trick of giving away one item every week. So I would give this to charity mostly, or I'd give it to friends if that made sense. Just because you've gotten to your 100 things doesn't mean that the world's going to stop like working around you. You still need to actively fight to be a minimalist. You have to. I still gave away one item every week. This next trick may be singly responsible for how I was able to become a minimalist in the first place. I kept a very public record of how many items I left. So I used to have a whiteboard in my bedroom, and I would keep a count on there of how many items I had total. So it started at, I don't know, something on 1,000. And then as I gave away items, I had a little bit of like a nice feeling when I get to make that number lower. Well, when I finally got down to 100, I kept that up there, and when I'd get a new item, I'd make sure that I'd like ruin my record of getting I'd get back to 101. I'm like, shoot, and then I'd go actively get rid of a new item or replace it with something old so that I got back down to 100. And I think by keeping this public record of how many items I kept, that it allowed me to stay at this very, very low and minimal level of ownership. Now, this next item is going to sound very obvious, but I'll tell you from experience, it's hard to execute on. So the item is replace, don't add. So for example, when your shoes finally gave out, it's important to replace them. What I recommend is go buy the most expensive pair that makes sense for you, that you can afford. And this way you'll have something of higher quality, so it's going to last you longer. The difficult part here is that replacing rather than adding is actually hard to do. It's very like counter to what culture generally teaches us, which is to add more, to acquire more things. So what I've found is I have to actively replace items instead of just add to my total ownership. And again, this sounds very obvious, but you're going to find in your every day-to-day item this is hard. So something you got to constantly remind yourself: replace, don't add. This last tip I think is actually the most important. It's to have quarterly stuff audits. So I don't know how this happens. Even though I was very, very strict on how many items I own, I still would acquire stuff without even knowing it. So maybe, I don't know, socks would come out of nowhere when I'm doing my laundry, or I would get clothing without even knowing that it was happening. So what I instituted was quarterly audits. So at 4 times a year, I'd go through and recount all of my stuff. And this seems kind of like unnecessary, because if you would imagine if you have 100 things, you can just keep track of all of it. In my experience, that wasn't the case. So after I implemented these audits, it kept me like true to it. I was able to make sure that my public count was like very obvious and available, and it made it so that I was able to actually stay at this 100 item things, which I found to be exactly what my goal was and really, really helpful. So that's not actually all the advice I have on minimalism. I have more. I've actually created a few videos on this. So if this is a topic that intrigues you, check out some other videos. I did one on the things that I add that I travel with, the actual like packing list, and also a process for becoming a minimalist if you're just getting started with this. So if this is something that interests you, check out the videos. I'll put them in the end card right after this, or feel free to subscribe to the channel.